Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world today. This is Grant Cameron. I'm with my assistant Desta Barnaby, and we're with my good friend Rob Freeman, who's here in Manitoba filming UFOs and doing a documentary. And while we were moving around with Rob and his partners, he told me a couple of stories, and one of the stories I want to get into now, and this has to do with inspiration. I wrote a book called Inspired: The Paranormal World of Creativity. And I talk about inspirations that created some of the biggest companies in the world, like Google, and how these companies actually got formed. And you told me the story of your company in Ontario, so I want you to start and give us some background on a company that you sold for an awful lot of money. And it's a very bizarre paranormal story that I would love you to tell to my audience.
Sure, thanks Grant. Basically, it starts out when I was a kid. Back in the 50s, there weren't many toys. And my dad didn't have a lot of money, and one of the toys we got for Christmas was a phone set made by Remco. And they're just these plastic phones with a couple of big batteries inside, and when you turned the little dial around, it would ring the other phone, and there was 50 feet of wire. And with my brother and I, we're not having many toys. That was, to me, that was a high-tech, to us, that was a high-tech toy at the time, big time. And it was so cool that we could have a real phone just like the phone out in the living room, right? And so we had one phone in my bedroom and one in his, and we would just chit-chat with each other on the phone, and that was just such the coolest thing for us as little boys. And so one day I was telling my friend at school about these phones, and he says, oh, I would love to come to your place and see how they work, because nobody else had anything like this, right? We get home to my place, this is right after school, and I pick up the phone and I try to call the other phone and it wouldn't work. I wasn't happy about that. And he wasn't happy. He'd come all the way to my place, and he was going to have to walk all the way home after this. So this was a special and a big deal to do this. And it didn't work. So I wasn't happy, and I grabbed the phones and I took them out to my mom in the kitchen, who was making dinner. I said, Mom, the phone doesn't work and my friend's here to see it and it doesn't work. Can you fix it? And she says, oh, Rob, I wouldn't have a clue how to fix it. You're going to have to wait till your dad gets home. And I thought, oh gosh, he won't be home for another hour and my friend has to go. And I says, come on, Mom, you got to fix it, right? And she says, Rob, I don't know. And she reached in the kitchen drawer and grabbed a screwdriver. And she gave it to me. And she says, here, you try to fix it. And I'm thinking, me? There's no way. And she said, just try.
And how old are you at this time?
About, oh gosh, probably about 8,
okay.
8 or 9,
okay.
Right? Very young. And so I opened up the phone, left the cover off, and the connection where it connects to the batteries, the little screw that holds it down had come loose and the wire had come off. And I could see it very plain. And I thought, oh, maybe it's this. Maybe this is the problem. I put it back on and I tightened it up, put it back together, and the phone worked. And I couldn't believe my eyes. I thought, wow, I fixed the phone. To me it was huge that I actually fixed something. Because I remember, previous to that, taking apart an old alarm clock with all the gears. Yeah. And when I put it back together, there were more gears left over. It still worked though. Yeah. But the alarm function wouldn't work anymore. Yeah. So I wasn't really good at fixing things until this. So, and what happened was, my dad saw that I had the interest in these phones. And so for Christmas, he bought me, there was a town nearby Sarnia, Ontario, where we lived, because this is back, early 60s. This is like 1960. So they were getting rid of all the old grandfather phones, the crank phones, and the old switchboards, and they were converting over to the rotary dial. That was the high-tech automatic phones at that time. And they were getting rid of them, and my dad knew the guy there, and so he bought a whole bunch of stuff for me for next to nothing. But for me, they were like treasures. And so one of the things was a switchboard, and we had these grandfather phones, and so I hooked up all the kids in our neighborhood. And I had the switchboard in my room. And we got permission from the neighbors and that to bury cables, because I got all this wire included with it. Stuff they had pulled off the poles, right? I got it all. Just a ton of what most people would call junk. right? But for me, I was in seventh heaven. You know, opening up these old phones and seeing all the dusty old parts that it all still worked. And it actually worked. So, you know, we got permission, and the one lady says, you can put the wire wherever you want as long as you don't, you know, dig up my tulips. So we just put the wire along the fence line all the way, and we made up signs, you know, buried cable, do not dig. So as young kids, we just had a lot of fun with this. And then when my friends one friend wanted to call another, you know, he'd crank the phone and it would ring in my room, and I was at supper, I'd put my fork down and run in and answer it, and then place the call to the other friend, right? And then when they hung up, there was another little ring or something, and you disconnect the cable. So for me, it was just a lot of fun, right? And then later, once again, my dad saw that I had this interest. And I mean, I had no clue, but he told me this years later, right? So he actually, his good friend Graydon Baines worked for the phone company, Bell Canada, in Sarnia, and was the manager. And my dad announced to me one day, he says, would you like to learn how the phone system works? And I said, I'd love to. So he arranged for the technician, the manager, my dad's friend, arranged for the guy to come in on a Saturday. And he spent 3 hours. And with the dial phones, it's all electromechanical. So when you dial a number and then it releases and goes click, 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 what happens is there's these, they look like tomato juice cans. And there's like these wiper things. And when you dial and release, it goes click, 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 click. It counts up the number that you just dialed. And then when you dial the next digit, it goes over, click, 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 and it goes to another one. And that's how it completes the call to everybody in the exchange, right? So I was totally in seventh heaven there again. And then it wasn't long after that that my dad said, would you like to learn how the long distance phone system works? And he had a friend who was the manager of that company, an independent company outside of Sarnia. I guess it was part of a setup as a long distance transfer or whatever, right? I don't even remember now. But he taught me how all that works. So I had this knowledge as a kid, like of 8 years old. And then I was always fascinated by phones, and even when I was in university, I was taking electrical engineering, and whether this is, again, synchronicity or not, but at that time in the co-op, they told you what job you got. You couldn't choose. I think you could choose 3. Like, there were postings, and you could maybe pick 3, and it was still up to them how they got you. Like, you didn't decide. You could just say, I would like any one of these 3, and then you were lucky to get a job. So in university, I got a job working for a mobile phone company. This is the old style cellular phones where they're 25 watts, and it's a big box in the trunk, and this phone that's installed on your, you know, the hump or whatever, and it's got a receiver, and it's like a two-way radio, and if you key the mic and you touch the antenna outside, you'll get a shock. That's how much power there is on those ones. And in the city of London, there's 2 channels for the whole city. So only 2 people can talk at once. And in Toronto, there's 15 channels, right? And it was basically when you want to make a call, you got to listen in on each channel. So pick which channel you want to listen in on. And when it's free, you key the mic. And somehow, the strongest signal it locks onto. So you could keep keying all day. If another car is closer to the tower, he'll get the signal and you won't. Wow. And the operator comes on and places your call. Anyway, so I installed phones in cars, which, you know, I kind of enjoyed doing that. Anyway, so I went through engineering, and I didn't really do well. I got through the first year, and I liked it so much I had to repeat it again. And I got into the second year finally, and it was even worse, and the mathematics was just beyond me. And I'm the type of a guy that if I can't see how I'm going to use this, it just won't go into my brain. It's kind of like a filter. It just says, what are you going to use this for? And it just wouldn't go in. I would stare at my books trying to do my homework, and it was like a big, huge mental block. You know, I'd learn more if I just closed the book and slept on it, probably. Anyway, so I left university, and I was doing different things, and I got into real estate, and that was good. I did really well and won all kinds of awards and stuff, but it really wasn't me. And I said, I want to do something where it's a creative endeavor that I'm involved with. I'm not just buying into some other system where, okay, you got to sell houses and here's what you do, just do it. I wanted something that I could be part of, where I'm developing it, right? And I remember telling my friend, I want to sell something where it's a little bit of money to a lot of people. So you've got a lot of customers, right? I remember telling him that. And then kind of fast forwarding a bit, at one point I did get out of real estate and I went out west, went back to school, and that didn't go very well. And it was actually when I came back, I needed to get work, and I, you know, there was an ad for a company that sold phones, so I went to work for them, and I really didn't sell anything. I was more interested in how the phones worked than actually selling them. But while I was there, I was reading the magazines they had about how they were going to open up competition in Canada. And I thought, well, this sounds interesting, you know. And I remember the day the inspiration came to me. It's pretty vivid. I was sitting at home. I mean, I was unemployed at that point, and I had this strange compulsion to go out to the car and get the map. And I didn't know why. I just thought, well, I'll follow it. You know, it was like, go get the map, right? And I laid it out on the kitchen table, and I looked at it and I thought, what does this mean? And I saw the cities as like telephone exchanges.
Yeah.
Like, and I thought, who can London call for free? That's where I lived. Who can London call for free? It listed in the front of the book. So I put a circle around London and I drew a line out and circled the towns. Okay, it's free to here, free to here. Okay, yeah, but who can they call for free? And where is this puzzle gonna go, right? So I looked in the phone book and it gave where they could call for free, so the lines kept going out. And I thought, this is interesting. I took my map down to the library to get all the books out for Ontario and to see if this connects right across the whole province. And guess what? It did. And I thought, wow. So if you could jump the calls from one city to another, somehow connect these calls, you can make free calls around the province on the phone system, unlimited, right? And I thought, but how do you do it? I did my research, and there was no internet then, so it was kind of slow, but I found out there was such a device called a call extender. A call extender is where you have two phone lines, and so somebody from the outside would call into this phone line. That could represent one city where it's free between the two, so this city can call into this city to that line extender, and it answers with dial tone of the second line. So when you call in, you usually have to put a code in, and then it connects you to this outgoing line. So it's as if you're sitting in that city, even though you're in this city, for free. It's a local call between the two cities. So I thought, wow, you could put these line extenders everywhere, and then you could route your way around the whole province for free, and you could set this up, and you could sell it as a business. You could offer competition, because I thought competition is coming in, right? So that was interesting, and then I had to find out where you could get these devices, and I bought one, right? They were $1,000, and I kept doing research, and I remember going down to the phone company, and I said about setting up something like this, and they said, oh, you can't compete against Bell. And, well, where does it say that? Well, in those tariffs. There was a whole wall of books. These are their tariffs, right? And I was rooting through all this stuff for what seemed like hours, and the lady felt sorry for me, so she said, well, can I get you a chair to sit down? It looks like you're going to be here for a while. And she says, well, can I help you? What exactly are you looking for? And I said, well, I want to do this. Where would I find it? And she said, that would be in the local exchange tariffs. And she said, what you want to do is set up a sharing group. She said, you can take our services and you can configure them up however you want, and you can't resell at that time because there's no competition, but you can share it. So, and they said, here's the liability agreement. So it's right in the tariffs. Everybody in your sharing group signs it, and you appoint somebody as the manager of it. That would be me. And you know, I would receive the bill, and you could share the cost among everybody. You can't make money on it, but you can take out an administrative cost. It's reasonable. So you can set up a sharing group. Many of the big companies did that in order to get better costs with Bell Canada, right? So I thought that's interesting, because what I did was I got, for London, for example, there was this town of Mount Bridges. And then it was local from London to Mount Bridges. And then Mount Bridges was local to Strathroy. So Strathroy was the next biggest city next to London, but it was long distance between these two. And I thought, I'll bet you in Strathroy everybody wants to call London, right? And at that time it was 42 cents a minute, very expensive. So what I did was I approached a guy, and he let me put 2 phone lines in his garage. I paid him $5 each a month, whatever, for the phone line. And I had to rent the phone lines, but I paid him for the, lease of the space, right? And I got one of these call extenders, as I said, and I connected it. And I needed to run a test. Like, if you have one line, how many people will that service, right? So I set up a system with a code, and then I went door to door in Strathroy. And I said, if we had a system like this, would you be interested? And they said, well, I call my sister in London all the time. It costs me a fortune, right? So I said, well, you can use this for free, but I need you to write down how often you get a busy signal, right? So I got like, I don't know, 10 or 15 people using this one line, and they kept track of it nicely for me. That gave me my research. And I figured out that you could have 10 people for one line before they start bumping into each other. It's a 10-to-1 ratio. So then I then formally made it a sharing group, and I got more lines, and I went door to door, and I had everybody sign this liability agreement. Now, people didn't want to do that. They said, how do we know you're going to not just take our money, like we're going to share the cost of this, and run? I said, here's what we're going to do. I said, I'm going to advance the money, and I'm going to pay the phone company bill 3 months in advance. And you're going to get a photocopy of the bill each month, and you're going to see this credit on the bill. If you ever see that credit start to dwindle, that's the alarm bell, right? As long as there's always money ahead, then you know the system's paid for. So even though you're signing liability, that each person's responsible for the entire cost, should the bill not be paid. Like Bell could go to any one of those people and demand payment, right? That's what they were afraid of. But the thing of it is, as long as the bill is paid 3 months in advance, that's never an issue. So they thought, that's great, and they all signed up. So I kept building it up. We had 10 lines, and I had 100 people. And it was the London Telecommunication Sharing Group, right? And I administered it, and then I thought, where else do we set up? So I set it up to Exeter through Lucan. Lucan was the hopping off point. And I set it up Belmont, bumping you through to St. Thomas. So I had 3 groups, and it was 400 people. And I was making a little living off of this, right? Not much, but it was enough to pay the bills. And I was following along with the rules of how the commissioners at CRTC were going to structure competition. It was being debated, and this is a process that takes time. And finally, they announced that competition is going to start like on this date, right? Now, it was announced, but it wasn't widely advertised, and most people didn't even know. And here's where the interesting part comes in. I thought, gosh, if I now do this and actually start charging people, like right now we're basically splitting it, and then I was charging an admin cost, right? But it was going to be switched to become a resale operation where the liability is on me, I own the system, you're a customer, and you just pay me, right, for unlimited calls. And I thought, where do I go to set this up? Where in Ontario? Where in Canada? Where do I start? And I kept asking myself, like, I need to know where I should set the next one up. I have no clue. And there's no internet, so you can't easily research stuff, right? So you could say I put it out there to the universe, right? Well, it was like a week or 2 later, I got a knock on the door, and it was a UPS guy. And he had this tube, like this big around and like that long, and he delivered it to me and left. And I thought, what the heck is this? And I thought, well, this is from the CRTC. I did request some documents from the CRTC. Would it be that? And I read the outside of it, and it said, like, 5th level managers only. Bell Canada. And I thought, wait a minute, that sounds kind of top secret to me. So I immediately got up and I closed the curtains. And I opened it up and I felt my face going red because I thought, am I being set up or what's going on here, right? Because Bell Canada, when I had my little sharing system, they did knock on my door.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like they sent their spies or they sent their intelligence people.
Wow.
Because the guy asked me a lot of questions. And I said, I assure you this is legal and blah, blah, blah. And he was okay with that after investigating me, right? They're very covetous of their system,
Yeah.
as you know. So I opened it up and I thought, my God, should I be looking at this? And as I opened it up, it was an executive summary that the Bell managers had put together and presented to CRTC as part of the hearings. It was an executive summary, and now the statute of limitations is over here, so I can say all this, right? But because this was like 1988 or whatever, I looked through it and it detailed out financially Bell Canada's revenue, where it all came from on an exchange by exchange basis for long distance. And my face was just deep red and I'm looking at this and I thought, my God, like this was just so overwhelming. And I thought, this is exactly what I was asking for. Exactly, how is this possible? Like they talk about things falling off a truck, right? And literally, it didn't quite fall off, he delivered it, but it did come in on a truck. And I couldn't believe it. And I thought, after reading through, and I thought, do I take pictures of this? No, no, don't do that. This is industrial espionage. This is what this is. So I thought, just look at it, right? And then close it up and send it back. And it detailed out where the revenue was. And I could see, based on all the charts and the maps and everything, the highest revenue for long distance for Bell Canada in their entire network was the Hamilton to Toronto corridor. The people calling from Hamilton to Toronto was where Bell made millions per month. You know, ripping people off. But anyway, so I had, that's where I set up. My question is answered. Now I know where to set up. It was given to me on a silver platter. So I called the CRTC up right away. This only took me a few minutes to get all this information. I put it back in the tube and I called them up and I did tell a little fib and I said when I read that I didn't really look at it, but she said, oh my goodness, you shouldn't have that information. I don't know how you got it, but it has to be returned immediately. She says, I'm putting you on hold and I'm calling UPS up right now and I'll send the man right back. And she came back online and said he should be there within 10 minutes. And he came knocking on the door laughing. He said, I guess you weren't supposed to receive this. And I said, no, here it is. But I had the information right there, right then. And so I set up from Hamilton to Toronto, Hamilton area to Toronto. And it's a flat rate and it was like $29 a month. But I couldn't get a single customer. And I was paying, it wasn't done with these line extenders. I was using the Bell Canada Centrex system. So it's the same thing, but it's virtual now. You know, you can rent their Centrex system. It's like you can configure a network within the network, and that's what I did, right? But the system cost $800 a month, right? And I couldn't get any customers. I had ads running every day, and nobody would call.
They just didn't trust you.
They didn't trust, and I would go door to door, and people would slam the door. They'd use a lot of four-letter words and get off my property, and you can't compete with Bell. They have the monopoly. And I said, but it's been in the paper. They didn't do a very good job of announcing it, right? And people didn't believe it. So, you know, some time had gone by, a few weeks now, and my wife at home she got my bill, and she happened to open it up for the cost of the system, the bill from Bell. And it was like $800. And this is back in like 88 or 89 or whatever, and it's like, that's a lot of money then. And we just had a newborn. And she said, what's this for? This must be a mistake. You know, our phone bill's like, you know, $30, not $800. And I said, no, that's for the system in Oakville, right? Well, what's that for? And I said, well, that's the business I'm trying to get going and everything. And she said, well, how many customers do you have? And I said, well, none. She says, you have to get rid of that. And I said, well, I says, just give me some more time. And it was like the middle of December. And I said, just, give me to the end of the year. I threw that out there. And she kind of, put her hands on her hips and, okay. And she left and kind of closed the door, and it kind of closed a little bit heavier. I knew she wasn't happy. And I'm continuing to go day after day and nothing. Nobody would take it. And I thought, what do I do? This is the best thing since sliced bread, and I can't get a customer. What do I do? I guess you could say I put that out there again, right? I put it out there again. And I remember I was driving to Hamilton, Burlington area, and I never listened to AM, but for some reason I was tuning in on the AM dial. Like I say, I never listened, but that day I was, right? And I tuned into the station, and it was kind of weak, and it was fading in and out, and it was WOW Indiana, Fort Wayne, Indiana. It's one of these long wave stations that goes far. And they were just saying, it was a guy interviewing successful entrepreneurs. And he had this one on the line. He said, John, we've been talking for the last hour about, what would-be entrepreneurs can do when just nothing is working. And I thought, oh, this is for me, right? And he says, so many people give up and so on. You've been very successful. We've been talking about this for the last hour. Could you summarize everything as we close out the conversation or whatever? And he said, he said three things. He said, believe in yourself, believe in your own ideas, but most importantly, stick-to-itiveness. And he says, many guys and gals, when it's just about ready to break open, whatever it is they're doing, whether it's sales or whatever, they give up. He said if they can just pick up the phone one more time, make one more call, make one more cold call, just hang in one more week, he says, I guarantee you'll have a breakthrough, and it will happen for you. And because I was getting so tired of going day by day and nothing, and the rejection factor every day. It's like telemarketers when people hang up on the phone. So I pulled the car over, I wrote it down, and I stuck it in my wallet. And when I got really kind of, feeling like, God, maybe my wife's right, just disconnect this thing, right? I know it's good, but I can't get a customer. I would pull it out and I'd read it, and it's like, well, he said. Right? He said this. So I just kept at it. And then we're getting into, I don't know, the 18th or 19th of December. It's getting very close to the end of the month where the deal was that I got to disconnect. And I'm thinking we're coming into Christmas time, like everybody's thinking Christmas. Nobody's going to buy anything except Christmas presents, right? And so I got a phone call from Wade Hemsworth from the Hamilton Spectator. And he called and identified himself on the phone, and he says, hi, Rob. It's Wade from Hamilton Spectator. He says, I see your ads in the paper every day. And I said, yeah. He says, is that a scam? He says, there's no competition to Bell. He said, what's this all about? And I said, well, actually, they've brought in competition. I explained to him about the rules and regs, but I said, nobody really knows. They haven't done a very good job of promoting it yet. And he says, well, tell me about your system. And he said, well, how many customers do you have? And I thought, uh-oh, here comes an executive decision. And I thought, okay, I don't want to lie, but I still had my sharing group, right? And I had now converted that over already now to this was resale. And I had 400. So I said, well, I got 400 customers. But it was not of the system there, it was the one. So I thought, well, that's okay. And he says, well, I really like this idea. And he said, do you mind if I write a story on it? And I thought, wow, there really is a God. And so he took more answers and asked more questions and stuff. And I said, well, when will it appear? And he says, well, it's going to be a quarter-page presentation on the front of the Burlington Today part of our newspaper. Right? And I thought, wow. It's like there's like 3 or 4 sections, and this is section number 2. The separate pieces of paper, right, for the newspaper. And he says, give me a quarter page. And I said, well, when will it come out? He said, January 2nd. Oh, my heart just about sank. I thought, uh-oh, I've made a deal with my wife. You pull the plug, you know, kill it December 31st. What am I going to do now, right? So I get home, and I'm all excited about this. And once again, she had come out of the kitchen, and we're talking. And I said about I got a call, and she looked at me like I'm lying through my teeth, right? That I'm making all this up. And I said, honey, just give me a week extension, right? 1 week. And she kind of, you know, one of those things, hands on hips or whatever, into the kitchen again. The door closes rather loudly again. And, you know, I mean, she said things like, you know, you're taking money out of our son's mouth. You're taking his diapers and all that. And I thought, you know, she's right. She's not wrong. And I thought, well, we're going to make it or break it right now. So, you know, I kept going to the Burlington and Hamilton area right through the holidays and everything. Nothing. Nobody took the service. And then January 2nd, I think it was like, I don't know, 5:45 in the morning, my cell phone started ringing. You know, I just saw the article with Wade in the paper, and I'd like to take your service. It's really only $29 a month, unlimited to Toronto. I said, yeah. He says, sign me up right now. Can I give you my visa number? I said, well, do you want to hear the pitch? He said, no. He said, if Wade says it's good, he says, I'm in. I read him all the time, and he's never wrong. You know, he's honest and all this stuff, so I don't have to hear the pitch. And at the time, too, I didn't have any money. And even for my sharing group in those 3 towns, I had to borrow the money. I got a New Ventures loan through the bank. And it was, each one was $1,000, so it was $10,000 loan. I think I bought the first one, but I had to buy the other ones. Even when I got that New Ventures loan, like I didn't have a job. So how the heck do you get a loan when you don't have a job? You know, who's going to take a chance with you? Not a bank manager normally, right? And I had gone in, and he said, what was the government program to promote new business, new small business and entrepreneurs? He had this booklet. He says, you know, fill this out and make an appointment with my assistant for next Wednesday, right? And at that time, there's no word processors or nothing. It's just old-fashioned typewriters with mechanical. So I had to take the staples out of the booklet and put each page in and type all the stuff. But they wanted cash flow forecasts. They wanted projections for 5 years, you know, every month for the first year, and then all this. I had no clue. So I went to the library to learn about this. Like, what is this all about? What does it even mean? But I did it all. It took me hours and hours and hours. And I went back to my appointment and I gave it to him. And he went like this, brrr, took it and threw it in his drawer and closed the drawer. And I was indignant. I was so upset. I said to the bank manager, I says, aren't you going to at least read it? And because I thought I haven't got the loan, right? So I can be kind of rude to him. And he says, Rob, relax. You got the loan. And I thought, oh God, I'm sorry. And I said, well, you've approved me just like that? Because now I'm the opposite, like, you know. And he says, well, Rob, most guys I give this book to never come back. He says they can't be bothered to do this work to get the loan, right? It's only a $10,000 new venture loan, they called it, and they just go somewhere else. So he said, if you've taken the trouble to do this, and he said, I can see your passion. So he said, you got the loan, don't worry. So he took me out to the girl, and he says, write Rob a check for $10,000. So I got it, right? So anyway, coming back to the story, on that, whatever it was, 5:45 in the morning, the phone started ringing, and I signed up my first customer in that area, and I hung up the cell phone, and immediately it starts ringing again. And same thing. It's like the same thing every time. Like, Wade says it's great. Hey, I'm in. And then people would say, we're spending $200, $300, $400 a month, and this is like $29. I'm in, right? Now, the good thing was, like I said, I didn't have any money, and it's like, how am I going to build this system out, right? So my thought was, so I'll take first month, I'll take last month, first month payment for the month ahead, take last month deposit, and an installation charge, because I had to put in auto dialers. right? And so it was, you know, $30 plus installation of 50 for residential and 75 for business.
Yeah.
So I started, you know, and I would go and install them. I'd go to Hamilton, install these auto dialers. And, but that's how I got the money to grow it. So I basically got 30 times 2 is 60 plus 50. I got 110 for every single person right up front before they even picked up their phone, right? And the billing for Bell is always a month behind. So I got a month in advance for my stuff and paid the Bell a month after the fact, right? So I started building up all this money and then that was used for advertising and all the things associated with the company. And so every time I hung up the phone there that morning, there was another call waiting. And there was way more than that. There was like, for everybody that got through, there was like 10 people that went to voicemail. So my wife was calling in from the phone to my voicemail, and all she was doing was writing down names. And as soon as she would delete the message, another one got through and left a message. So there was like always about 15 messages on, and the whole day, she spent just taking the calls out of the voicemail. And so then right away, you know, I'm going installing these things in, and it wasn't long when it was a whole month people had to wait to get on the service. And now some were trying to bribe me. You know, I'll give you an extra $50 if you come today, you know. And I thought, no, I can't do that. I just have to, you know. I was booked. I booked like 8 installs a day, right? Once an hour.
Yeah.
So basically it was 45 minutes at the place and 15 minutes drive time, right? I mean, most of the time was spent them finding their checkbook and writing out the check to pay me, right?
Yeah.
And I had, every day I walked home I came back with 8 checks times whatever that number was.
Yeah.
So it was close to what, $1,000 a day?
Yeah.
You know, so it was building up pretty fast. And I got so busy I had to hire people to help me out and never looked back. And you know, at one point we got into, there was a financial challenge, and my accountant lady walked in and she says, we're gonna go under, you know. And she says, the way the numbers are going, we won't be able to meet our obligations and all this. And I says, relax, Catherine, you know, let's identify all the areas. So we got all the managers together, you know, we're a much bigger company then. And we went through and identified a number of areas where we could cut. And she wanted me to go for a loan. And I thought, I know I'll never get a loan. So I actually went to try to get a big loan from the bank, and they wouldn't give it to me. And we identified the areas where we cut back, and we did. And we got back in the black again. And then I think it was that year that I got Entrepreneur of the Year award in Ontario. Mm-hmm. And it was the premier that handed me the certificate, right? Wow. And it's funny because the same guy who turned me down for the bank loan was there patting me on the back, asking how much I need. Like, wow. How many million can we give you? Wow. You know, without questions. Because I you know, was the #1 guy in Ontario, right? And there was like Royal Bank, there was CIBC, Bank of Montreal, all the big guys at this event, because that's where they go for Get Business, right? Yeah. All the runners-up of this big award. And because they're, you know, companies that are going places, right? And they're going to be able to pay back their loans. But it kind of gave me great pleasure to say no to these guys, right? So, and then we kept growing. It went from 1988 to 1999. And then I was on a vacation in Alaska and the Yukon with my sons and another family in motorhomes. And I had taken a sat phone with me. At that time, they were in a suitcase, if you remember. Yeah. You lifted up the top lid and the antenna there, and you had to point the lid at the satellite, right? Wow. And the calls were like $5 a minute or more. But anyway, and I would check in from time to time, and there were no calls. And all of a sudden, I checked one time. We were there for 2 weeks, and I checked the one day, and there were 5 calls. It all came in within a 7-minute period. Wow. And I thought, oh my God, what's happened back at the company, right? Yeah. And it was my top manager, Rob. What was the name of the company? There was another long distance company, and we had started a price of $69 or $79 for all of Canada, unlimited, per month, right? And what had happened was another company came out. They wanted to get rid of us. So it was 25 bucks. $24.95, unlimited flat rate across Canada. And they were trying to steal all our business. You know, predatory pricing.
Yeah.
Could have actually taken them to court. Because I figured out, I knew what our costs were, and I had already figured out that they were selling well below their cost. And you can't do that. You can have certain, I don't know, there's a lot of rules with the government on this, but predatory pricing is not legal, and that's what they were doing. And my managers were saying, Rob, what do we do? What do we do? We can't compete with this. And I said, simple, sell the company. And people always ask me, when are you going to sell the company? And I said, when there's somebody else that's matching our program, it's time to sell.
Yeah.
Right? So we put the company up for sale. There were no takers, and we even offered it to Bell Canada. They said, we would love to take you because we used all their network services. We were their biggest customer. We would love to buy you, but we're restricted with our agreement with CRTC. We cannot buy our competitors. They want to promote competition, and we can't touch you. But they would be the normal person to buy us, right? So what happened next was we had hemorrhaged, 30,000 customers. We were 150,000, and then we lost 30,000 customers, so we were in the red big time. And once again, we had to go through and cut, and we had hired a consultant, and they were there for a month, and they went through the whole company, and they came back with this Bible of all the things we needed to do. You know, they set us up with fake customers, and they followed things through, and all the processes at our company, how they could be made lean and mean, right? And we did that, and we got back in the black again. And it's like, how are we going to sell the company, right? And there was a company called Primus Canada, and they were a competitor. And I used to go out for lunch with him once a year, and we'd chit-chat and stuff. And he would always call me up, and we'd just talk about the industry and stuff. He'd pick my brain, I'd pick his brain. And I remember when we had the company up for sale with Price Cooper Waterhouse, whatever it is, Price Waterhouse. And he said, now since you've got it listed with us, we will field all the calls. That's what you're paying us for. It's not cheap, and we will completely look after the sale of this company. So if you get a call from anybody, please refer them to me, right? He says you will get a lot of sneaky people who will try to reach you, that's me, because I'm the owner of the company. And at that point, my top guys had earned into about 15% of the company. But he said they're going to try to get to you to get information, and especially if they hear it's for sale, and they'll try to get inside information. He said it's important that you put everybody through us. We need to be in control of this process so we can manage it properly for you. So right away after that guy saying that, the next day I got a call from Ted Chislett at Primus. And, hi Rob, I'm just checking in. And I thought, oh, this is one of those calls, right? President of another competitor, he's heard that we're for sale. Because it was all confidential, but word still gets out. And I thought, okay, I better not talk to him. I kind of forgot that we went out for lunch every year, right? For fun. And I thought, I better just send him over to our buddies at Price Waterhouse. I said, Ted, there's some interesting things happening. It will be worth your while if you give John so-and-so a call at Price Waterhouse, right? Well, what's it about, Rob? And I thought, oh yeah, he's really playing smart here, right? Smart as a fox. And I said, just give him a call. It'll be worth your while. Guaranteed. He says, okay. And we hung up. And he called, and he got the sales pitch, and they made an offer to buy the company, right? And I thought, yeah, I knew he wanted to buy it all the way along, right? And not. There's more to the story. So anyway, they bought the company, and they made a deal. And that's where I said before, their idea was to consolidate our employees into theirs, get rid of ours eventually. So I made them sign that they had to keep all the employees for 1 year till our guys could find a job, basically, right? Anyway, on closing, just before closing actually, they approached us and they said, we've made a cash deal for $76 million, right? And he says, but we'd also like to conserve cash. if you would agree to just take a smaller down payment of say 4 or 5 million, and the rest in shares at Primus, will give you 50% more for the company. 50%. Like turn 76 into what? 115 or something? I don't know. And right away I said, that's great, Ted, but not interested. And then I got a call from my top guys. They weren't happy. Because they had earned into 15% of the company, and for them that was very meaningful. And they even said, well, it's easy for you, you're getting all this money, and for us, we've got a smaller part of the company, and this would be meaningful to get 50% more, right? If they're ending up with say $1 million, they get $1.5 million. At that level, it is very meaningful, right? I said, no. Well, what's your reason? I said, I just don't feel right about it. I said, when we sell for cash, we got the money, it's real. They can do whatever they want with the company. They may not do good things with the company. I said, if we stay as shareholders and get a down payment, what's the point in even selling then? Yeah, it's more money if you get the money. I said we're basically bystanders. We could watch them run it into the ground, right? We're tied into securities rules that we have to keep the shares for so much period of time before we, as the inside people, can sell them, right? Mm-hmm. So I said, I'm not taking that deal. We go with the original deal, right? And so it closed, and we went all night signing all the documents. There's hundreds of documents that had to be signed. And I was there with Ted in the lawyer's office. My top guys, his top guys, and two of us, we were all there all night long. And that was the night of a blue moon. When there's two full moons in the month, mm-hmm. I said it's once in a blue moon that you sell a company like this, right? And it was literal and metaphorical as well. And I says, Ted, now tell me the truth. I says, you called me up. Did you hear we were for sale and you were just sneaking around? He says, Rob, I swear in the Bible, I was just calling you for lunch. No. And that's how that sale all happened, right? He was just calling me for lunch. And I thought that he was trying to get inside intel. So I sent him over to our guy. And that's the end of the story.
Oh, you were right about selling the company. Tell that story.
Mm-hmm.
You were right about taking the money. Tell that story.
Well, yeah. Oh, yes. That's true. So the company sold, and of course there's an announcement that goes out on the wire that London Telecom. By the way, London Telecom is short for London Telecommunications Sharing Group. Remember I had the sharing group? And I just shortened the name and ran with that. So so the deal closed. It was announced, and they were a public company. They were a much smaller company, but they were public. So it was a case of a small public company buying a bigger private company, right? And anyway, so when the sale closed, just as it closed, their shares were worth $55 per share on the public market, right? But the second it closed, then the announcement went out. I mean, there's a proper order this stuff has to be done according to the Securities Commission, to do with insider trading and all that stuff. So you have to close the deal, and now you can make the announcement, right? And it happens within minutes. And as soon as it closed and the word went out and the stock market opened or whatever, their shares jumped from $55 a share to $65. So didn't I receive a few phone calls from my managers, right? Rob, look at that. Do you realize how much that would mean for all of us? That's like a, 15% increase? Yeah. Something like that. And I said, yeah, I know. I said, but it's only on paper. I said, as you know, we wouldn't be able to sell for another 3 months, right? And it's like, I'm sticking with what I believed. And anyway, so as the days went on, after that initial day, it started going down, back down to $55, and it kept going. And it never went up. It always was going down. And a year later, not even a year later, I think it was January, because this was something like March of '99, and in January of 2000, it was the Y2K thing and all that. And that was even worse on telecommunication companies, all that stuff, you know, computers supposedly crashing because of the zeros and all that. Anyway, the share price kept going down, and by January it was down to 24 cents. Not even $24 or even $2.40. It went from a high of 65 bucks to 24 cents, which would have made the entire transaction worth less than $1 million. And but we'd already sold it. And the shares never, I think they at one point went up to $1 after that, and it wasn't long when they filed for protection or whatever, and reorganization. And you know, I think it was right around that time too, I got a call or two from my guys, boy, sure glad we didn't make that deal. And I thought, you're the guys that wanted to make the deal. But it didn't feel right. It's like, in the stock market, bears make money, bulls make money, pigs make none. Mm-hmm. And the price we got was a fair price, and it didn't need to be greedy. And, you know, offering 50% more, I was just, to me, it's on paper. It's a paper number, and it doesn't really mean anything. And, you know, there were other guys that sold their telecom companies that lost their shirt because of that. They would stay in bed with the company because their shares would be worth a lot more supposedly later, and same thing happened. It was because of the Y2K thing, all telecom dropped. As you know, at the time they were burying fiber everywhere, and they oversaturated the entire telecom market with fiber. It was like internet was really coming in, and there's, you know, hundreds of thousands of miles of dark fiber still around the world, unused. Because when the internet came in and they projected what they would need, and you know, whether you put one fiber in or 10 or 15 or 100 or 300, it's virtually all the same price. It's the cost of digging it in, right? The glass fiber is worth nothing almost. And so each fiber, the thickness of a hair, can carry thousands of calls and gigabytes and gigabytes and terabytes of data on one little hair of a fiber optic, right? And there's, in each bundle, I mean, there might be hundreds in these cables. And so there's, to this day, there's still so much unused capacity in the ground. And for that reason, telecom companies took a nosedive, and it tarnished all telecom companies, whether you're using fiber or not. It's kind of like telecom was a dirty word. If investors heard that word, they ran the other way because of this whole fiber thing. So, and that's what sent the price down, and then, you know, financially they got into trouble or whatever.
Let me ask you one other creativity, because you mentioned a little bit to me